New witnesses come forward in 1973 Pascagoula alien abduction case. Every claimed alien abduction case is weird by default, but the 1973 abduction of Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson in Pascagoula, Mississippi is weird even by those standards. The two men were fishing on the west bank of the Pascagoula River when, they said, a UFO appeared hovering above the ground. 3 creatures disembarked from the craft, paralyzed Parker and Hickson, and brought them aboard. According to the men, the creatures were pale with remarkably wrinkled skin, lobster-like claws for hands, and carrot-shaped growths where their eyes and ears should have been. The creatures seemed to each have one thick leg, like 2 legs had been fused together. On the ship, the creatures allegedly performed medical procedures and levitated them back to their original position 20 minutes later. Now 46 years later, a couple from the Pascagoula area has come forward claiming that they too saw something that night, but never before went public with their testimony for fear of ridicule. According to The Sun, Maria and Vernon Jerry Blair were sitting in their car looking out over the Pascagoula River, on the opposite bank from Parker and Hickson, when they saw strange blue lights begin circling around the area. Maria Blair says, "I thought was an aeroplane because of its bright lights flashing. And it just kept going back and forth across the sky. I told my husband there is something wrong with that plane. It is like he doesn't know where he wants to go." The couple allegedly watched the lights for approximately 40 minutes before stepping out of their car and walking down the pier towards the water. Maria says that is when she saw one of the creatures emerge from the water. "We started walking down the pier and something came up out of the water. It was like a person. I told Jerry there is somebody out there. They came up out of the water, then went back down. So I am standing there waiting for this person and the water rippled out. Jerry said, 'Come on, there is nobody out there.' I know I saw it. I walked down to the boat and it was about 11:30 p.m. to 12 p.m. before I came back down the pier. I was by myself. I ran back to the car." The impetus for the Blairs coming forward was apparently the recently published book Pascagoula: The Closest Encounter by Calvin Parker, who had previously remained largely hidden from media attention since the incident. Calvin Parker met with Maria and Vernon last Wednesday for the first time and says he felt an immediate connection to the couple. "It was a very emotional meeting from the beginning. It started out with both of us tearing up and automatically bonding. I felt like I had known Maria for years. It started off with her telling me that she saw the abduction on October the 11th, 1973, but didn't know who was involved until the following day. Mrs. Blair then set out on a quest to find me so she could see if we were okay. But she had no luck because I was in hiding away from the media attention. Her husband told her she would be a fool for coming forward and that everyone would make her out to be crazy. So she kept this to herself, telling me she would think about it every night and worry about me. Just like me, she had secrets that would haunt us for the rest of our lives. Thank God I wrote the book, as it has helped us come together. Although we have just met, we have had a connection for over 45 years. It is a weird case. The aliens are weird. The witness testimony is weird. There are weird holes in the descriptions of events. And everyone involved is weirdly earnest. Witness testimony is never proof of anything, but it is yet another layer in one of the strangest encounters with the paranormal that has ever been recorded.
So after we got off work, probably 4:30, I think, we were working 9 hours a day. I came home and to get my fishing gear. And we wouldn't go out in a boat because we were going to the banks of the river and fish from the banks for speckled trout and redfish. So we got our bait and we got to the river and tried several spots, and it become dark by that time. We do quite a bit of fishing after dark, down here in that time of the year. So I don't know what attracted my attention, where I had reached around and get more bait, which was sitting behind us, or I heard some kind of zipping-like sound, like air, steam or something escaping from a pipe. And as I turned around, I saw some two blue flashing lights, or either pulsating lights, I'm not sure. And it seemed like it was some type of craft, and it seemed like it was almost down to the ground then. In fact, it seemed to be about a couple of feet, above the ground. It just hovered there. So Calvin had turned by this time, and he was looking at it too. And really, I didn't know what to do. I was just spellbound there for a few minutes, and then almost immediately some type of opening appeared in the end that was toward us, with what I assumed to be the front end. And the light that had come outside, it was real bright light. And three things appeared in the doorway of the craft, and they seemed to just glide out of the craft. They never touched the ground. They seemed to just glide across. It must have been 25 or 30 feet from us, or maybe a little further than that. And they came to us, just glided over to us, and two of them took me by the arms from the side, and one took hold of Calvin, and I seen Calvin go limp, and I didn't know it then, but he had fainted. So they carried me inside the craft, and the light was almost blinding inside. In fact, for about 3 or 4 days, I had something like a bad welding flash in my eyes. And I can't recall, or I can't remember just what was on the inside, simply because the light was so bright that I just couldn't make out what it was. But I didn't see any tables or chairs, and the room seemed to be round. Of course, that could have been because the light seemed to be glowing from the walls and the overhead and the ceiling. But they carried me, I guess, about the middle of the room, and we would just seem to be suspended there. I couldn't move. I didn't have any feelings, no sensation of any feel. And it seemed something like a big eye. I keep referring to it as an eye because it was about the size of a small baseball. In the end, it was focused toward me. It was a different color or a different light. And it seemed to come directly out from the wall, and it came within 6 or 8 inches of my face. And it remained there for a few minutes, and then very few minutes, and then it went over my entire body. I'm assuming it did, because when it went down like this, I seemed to be suspended there, and the next time I seen it, it was coming back up over this way. So I assumed that it went over my entire body. But it came back in front of my face and stayed there for a few more minutes, and then it seemed to just go right back into the wall. And these things, the way they were holding me, I was elevated, because they weren't as tall as me, and they were upright, and I was elevated like this, and I could move my eyes, only thing I could move, and I could see that they had released me. And I don't know where they went, whether they went outside the craft or another room or compartment, but they didn't come in front of me. And they left me that way for a few minutes, I don't know how long. And then after a while, I seen them, when they come back to the side of me and took hold of me again, and they carried me back outside the craft, and we were still just gliding. I wasn't touching anything that I know of, and they seemed to just glide back out to where they had taken me from and put me back down on the ground. Well, when they did, I fell because my legs were weak, and they gave way on me. And it was this time that I seen Calvin again. He was standing there. He was standing facing the river with his arms outstretched, and he was almost in shock. He seemed to appear to me at that time something was wrong with him. But so I was trying to make my way toward him, and I was crawling. I couldn't get my legs to working. But before I got to him, the strength of what it was came back to my legs, and I was getting up on my feet, and I heard the same sound I'd heard before, a zipping sound. And I glanced around, and I saw the blue flashing lights, and the craft was just gone, just almost instantly. And I made it to Calvin, and I shook him and was calling to him, and it took me several minutes to get him where I could even talk to him, with any sense, and he was going in shock. And these things that came out of the craft, they were about 5 or 5 foot 4 inches tall, and they didn't have a neck. The head seemed to come directly to the shoulders, and they had something that resembled a nose on a face, and about where ears would be was something that was similar to the nose, only it was a little longer. They seemed to come out almost to a point. And under the nose, there was something like a slit for a mouth, and it was very wrinkled. And it appeared to me to be something like an elephant skin, but I don't know whether it was a metal or what it was. But it seemed to be very wrinkled, with the wrinkles running horizontal. And in the area where the eyes should have been, it was so wrinkled that I'm not even sure there was eyes. I can't recall whether there was any eyes or not, and Calvin says he can't. But anyway, after I got Calvin where I could talk to him, we didn't know what to do, and we were almost scared to death. And we first decided we wouldn't tell anyone, but the more we talked about it, the more we realized that we had to tell somebody. It was the military authorities, if nobody else. So we called Keesler Air Force Base, which is only about 30 miles south of here. And I talked to someone there, and they told me that the Air Force didn't handle those things anymore, that we would have to go through our sheriff's department. Well, then we hesitated again, because, you go to the people, just something like that is not supposed to happen, and when you would probably be laughed at and ridiculed. But we talked it over again and decided we would call the sheriff's department, and Sheriff Fred Diamond told us to come on over there, that we'd talk about it. So we stayed there for several hours talking with them and them questioners. And the sheriff promised me that it wouldn't any news media know anything about it, that he would try to get it to the proper authorities, if he could find out who the proper authorities was, and have it investigated. So we went home that morning, and it was morning, because they had kept us there quite late, and with assurance that there wouldn't be any publicity about it at all. Well, we went on to work that morning, and by 7 or 8 o'clock, there was telephones ringing, all over the shipyard. And I called Fred Diamond, and he said that he don't know how the story leaked out from the sheriff's department, but that by that time the whole world knew about it.
You said something that was like an eye ran up and down your body. Do you think it was like examining you?
Yes, it had to be some type of examination. Well, I say had to be. It appears to me that it would be. And after talking with a lot of scientists, and I'm convinced that it was something that was some type of examination that it did me.
Did you communicate with these creatures, these things?
No, and the only sound that they made, they didn't attempt to communicate with me. The only sound that they made, one of them, and I'm not even sure it come from one of the things, but it was some kind of mumbling like sound, a low mumbling sound from one of them. But other than that, they didn't try to communicate. I tried to say something to them aboard the craft, but I think now, and I have reasons to believe, many different reasons to believe, these things were robots. They weren't beings. They were being controlled by beings from somewhere else.
What made you think that's it?
Well, as I just mentioned, several reasons. I didn't see any movement of breath in the chest area. I didn't see any movement of breath in the slit of the mouth area. It didn't move. And when they move, they seem to move as something mechanically. They could move their arms like this and in their shoulders, but their head didn't move, and when they moved, they seemed to turn as if mechanically. It appeared to me that they had something that they were programmed, you might say, to do something. They had something specific to do, and they just simply done it, and their attention wasn't distracted one way or the other.
Did their examination of you hurt you?
No. The only physical pain that I had is when they took hold of me there on the banks of the river. The one that took hold of my left arm, and this arm here, just instantly I felt pain, but it was gone just that quick. And then once aboard the craft, at one time, I felt the same pain in the same area again, but it was just instantly. And that's the only physical pain that I had through the entire thing.
Now, approximately how long do you figure you were in the craft itself?
Well, I'm not sure, because I don't wear a watch. A watch won't keep time on me. And Calvin didn't have a watch. And we've tried to go back, and I've tried to go back and try to figure the time out from the time that we left the area going to call it Keesley Air Force Base and all. And it could have possibly been as long as well, it could have been anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, and probably even longer than that.
Can you give us some idea of the size of this craft that you were suspended within?
Well, the craft, let me explain now. The angle that I was looking toward the craft, it's hard for me to say, which I can't say, whether the craft was round like a disc or whether it was long or oblong like a cigar. Because it was, let me give you an example. Like the craft was sitting here. We're assuming that this is the front end of it. That was the end, it was toward us. Well, I'm looking at it from this angle, so all I can see is what is this side and what I'm assuming to be the front, and maybe it's a little bit of the back. So I can't be sure whether the craft was round like a disc or was long or oblong. But it appeared to me that it was about 30 or 40 foot long and maybe 8 or 10 foot high. Just before where the opening appeared, there seemed to be two small windows up toward the front and the top, two small windows, and directly behind the windows was the revolving or the pulsating blue light.
Now, you said you attempted to talk to these creatures. Could you not talk? Could your vocal cords not work?
Well, that's hard to explain. I know I was saying something, but for some strange reason I couldn't hear myself. You can hear yourself talk, but I know I was either saying something or trying to say something, but I didn't hear myself talking.
Now, when they brought you back outside, they deposited you on the bank where you were fishing before with your friend.
That's right, almost the exact spot, yes.
What kind of shape was he in?
He seemed to be, when I seen him, he seemed to be going in shock. I've seen many men in shock in the Korean War. And he seemed to be going in shock. Because it took me several minutes to even get in where I could talk to him to make any sense.
So once the craft deposited you and Calvin back on the bank, without any further ado, it just departed?
It departed, that's right, it departed.
Now, you said you went to the authorities. Did the Air Force at that time cite any radar sightings in that area at that time? Unusual sightings?
Well, I'm not sure, because the Air Force won't talk about those things. They didn't even want to talk, they didn't want to talk with us about it. The only connection that we had, you might say, with the Air Force is the next day, it dawned on me that we might have been contaminated with radiation or something. So we were at the sheriff's department, and I asked the sheriff if we could be examined for radiation, because I was quite worried. I've been with my family. I'd been in contact with many people. So Detective Huntley that called Keesler Air Force Base, and they said yes, they would check us for radiation. So they carried us out there, and they checked us. They swabbed our shoes, our clothing, and under our fingernails and all, and they put it, in little tubes, and I don't know what happened to it, but they said there wasn't any sign of radiation, and at that time we asked to talk with the intelligence at Keesler Air Force Base, which that was granted to us, and we went in a conference room with a bunch of colonels and of course Detective Huntley was there, and we told them what happened to us, and they seemed very interested, and they told us that a report would follow, which never did. So the Air Force, I think they just, I don't know, they just keep hands off of things like that.
Kind of brushed it under the rug.
For some strange reason, yes.
Have you been examined by any psychiatrist or put under any hypnotic trance to relate your story?
Yes, this happened on Thursday night. On Saturday morning, Dr. Alan Heineck from Northwestern University and Dr. James Harder from the University from Berkeley, they came to Pascagoula, and they questioned Calvin and me in length, and we were placed under hypnotism with a local psychiatrist present, along with a medical doctor present, and Dr. Heineck and Dr. Harder. Yes, we was hypnotized and questioned.
What was the result of that?
Dr. Harder and Dr. Heineck were convinced that it actually happened to us. And then I might add that we asked the sheriff that night, because after we decided to tell the sheriff, certainly we wanted to prove to him that it did happen. So we asked for a lie detector test. They didn't have the facilities here in Jackson County. So later on I think it was either the latter part of October or the early part of November, Calvin had a nervous breakdown because of this, and he was in a hospital in Jones County. I took a polygraph test here in Pascagoula, which proved that I was telling the truth.
Were you afraid during this entire thing?
I certainly was, and I can explain that. What I consider normal fear to be is something that you expect, just normal fear is something that you expect here on this earth. But this was something that wasn't supposed to even exist, and it's fear that you can't even explain. And shortly afterward, for a few months, I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't eat. It was on my mind all the time. But the fear's all gone now, and it's just not as much fear as it was before.
We handle it just like we would a regular routine call. If a guy comes into the office and say, "I've been robbed," it's my duty to believe that he's been robbed, and to investigate it as fully as we can. Well, all we could do was go to the scene and interview these men and really stay with these men and observe them and question them. I mean, to the fullest extent. And at no time could we, their stories were the same. We interviewed them separately and before, and then we put them together. We monitored their conversation. I believe the men saw something that scared them. Like I said already, I don't know what.
This is Harold Camillo speaking to you from the Jackson County Sheriff's Department here in downtown Pascagoula, where this morning we had an interrogation or interview with two of the gentlemen that reportedly sighted and were taken aboard a UFO late last night in the Goche area. These two men are still being interrogated, and we have with us Sheriff Fred Diamond. And Sheriff Diamond, could you tell us what took place this morning?
Well, shortly after 8 o'clock last night, these gentlemen were over fishing here just north of the Pascagoula River Bridge on the East River. And they sighted this object coming down, and it landed approximately 2 feet off the ground. It never touched the ground. And two creatures came out and carried the men aboard. One of the men passed out, and from excitement, one of them never did pass out, and there was no chairs, nothing much in the object. They were weightless at the time that they were in the spacecraft. They were very excited. They don't want to be interviewed at this time. At the present time, they're in St. River Hospital to be checked out.
This is what we understand, Sheriff Diamond, that the two gentlemen, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, are being checked out for radiation at this time. Now, we noticed this morning, of course, you interrogated these two gentlemen last night here at the Jackson County Sheriff's Department. You called them. Why did you call them back in this morning?
We wanted to get more information about exactly just what takes place.
I understand, Sheriff Diamond, that the youngest man, 18 years old, I believe, Calvin Parker, is still in quite a bit of state of shock.
That's very, very much true. He's still very, very upset.
Sheriff Diamond, we understand both these gentlemen work at the Johnny Walker shipyard. They both reported to work this morning, if I'm correct, and you had them come to the Sheriff's Department here from their job.
That's right. We had them come over. We had several news people here who wanted to interview them, and due to the advice of the attorney, they only wanted to release this information to the right governmental authority.
All right, this is something I want to ask Sheriff Diamond, if you know that we have a local attorney here representing these two men. He made the statement this morning before they would let the two men out of the car that no publicity would be given at that time. And you just got through talking to the men again. Their attorney has advised that there will be no interviewing because the men, according to the attorney, are still in a state of shock, especially the young boy. But could you tell us why they felt they needed an attorney?
This attorney represented the company that they work for, and they were working through his legal advice. This same object that was supposed to have picked these two men up was spotted about 45 minutes earlier up near the Van Cleve area. It was also spotted by 2 or 3 people in Pascagoula.
In other words, Sheriff Diamond, you've had, I know we talked to Deputy Glenn Ryder earlier this morning. There have been quite a few reports of this UFO in our area, and approximately at the same time that these two men have stated that they were taken aboard.
That's very true. They even give us a description of the creatures or characters, whichever we might want to call them. It was aboard the craft. They give a good description of them. They seemed to be around 5 foot tall. They were real wrinkled and had sharp ears, sharp nose, and their mouth was very near the end of the nose. They were horrible creatures from the description we got from them.
All right, Sheriff Diamond, these two men, as you mentioned, are on the way to the Singing River Hospital for radiation tests. What will happen after they leave the hospital?
That I don't know. They want to get with the right authorities, which would be the governmental authorities, and go over this with them before they give any release to any news media.
Sheriff Diamond, I asked Glenn Ryder this morning, and it seems to me that we haven't had a chance, of course, to talk to the two men themselves, but everybody that we have talked to that have talked to the men tend to believe their story. How about you?
Yes, sir. I definitely believe their story. I have no reason to believe it.
I want to ask you this, Sheriff Diamond. We're not too sure on the time. It happened, I believe, early yesterday evening, say around 7:30 or 8. Why did the men wait so long in reporting the incident?
They didn't know who to report it to. They first wanted to go for the newspaper, and they went for the newspaper, and it was already closed, so they immediately left there and came here. It happened shortly after 8 o'clock, and they were in the sheriff's office here around 9, around 5 minutes to 9.
Well, I understand we had a report earlier this morning that it was around 11 or 11:15, but it was earlier than that.
It was around 8 o'clock last night is when it happened, and they were in the sheriff's office around 5 minutes to 9.
Sheriff Diamond, did they describe the outward appearance of the ship itself?
No, sir, only the blue light. It had a glowing blue light, and that's what got their attention. At the time they saw the light, the craft was almost on top of them. It landed about 25 feet from where the men were fishing, and it seemed to just draw the men to the craft.
All right, Sheriff Diamond, you said after they do leave the Singing River Hospital, their next object is to report to possibly a governmental agency. Do you know for sure where they will be going or who they will talk to?
No, sir, I don't. I imagine they will probably, a governmental agency will meet them here at the sheriff's office.
In other words, they'll come down here to meet with them. Did we have a lie detector test?
We do have one, but at this time they were so upset they didn't want to take it.
All right, thank you very much.
I've agreed to take a lie detector test, even in Jackson.
In other words, they have no qualms about taking the test whenever you specify.
Both of them will take a test to prove that their story is true, and I definitely believe it.
I believe I heard one, Sheriff Diamond, as they first arrived here in your office. I think it was the young one, the 18-year-old man, said he was willing to take the test even last night.
That's very true, and he got very emotional up here this morning. Well, you wasn't in here, you didn't see that part, but these boys were telling the truth.
I noticed, especially, we keep talking about the 18-year-old, and I imagine, of course, this would be quite an experience for any age person. But we were talking to Glenn Ryder a while ago, and he said that the 18-year-old young man had only been down here for about 2 weeks. I believe he's from Jones County, and he is really upset by the situation.
That's true. I got a call from his mother about 45 minutes ago wanting to talk to him, and he's not even in a condition to talk to his mother at this time. They're going to the hospital, and I think they will give him something to quiet him down.
And as you stated, Sheriff Diamond, that you did have quite a few reports this morning coming in from other sightings from people in the different areas here in Jackson County.
Yes, sir. It was spotted more in Harrison County than it has been in Jackson County. They've been spotting this thing in Harrison County for over 2 or 3 weeks. But up until about a week ago, I hadn't had any reports of it being spotted in Jackson County.
Sheriff Diamond, have you seen any?
No, sir, I haven't.
You're going to be looking, though, aren't you?